Broadcasting from the Keep Moving Forward Creator Studio, it's time for the Keep Moving Forward podcast. Join us every week as we dive into the stories of remarkable current and former athletes that have transitioned into the real world. Now here's your host, Katie Galley.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the 163rd episode of the Keep Moving Forward podcast. I'm your host, Katie Galley. Today, coming to you from inside the Keep Moving Forward Creator Studio, I'm going to tell you all about my recent trip to Turkey. What I did, what I learned, all the turkey I ate. Just kidding, I didn't eat any turkey. If you are tuning in on iTunes through my podcast, awesome. Thank you so much for subscribing and being a part of this journey with me. But I also wanted to give you a heads up that this episode also comes with a video. If you would like to watch and listen to this episode, you can tune in at my YouTube channel. All right, so Turkey. The planning of this trip really began before I had any idea I would be traveling outside of the country. On January 1st, a mentor of mine, Valerie, challenged me to come up with a word to guide my year. One word that would lead me towards the setting of goals and just my overall aim for 2019. She challenged this of me because, as you athletes out there know, that goal-setting mentality is one that is ingrained within us since the very first time we set foot on the court, the field, the track. Just in any athletic context, goal-setting is so paramount in everything that we do. Lately, it seemed I really struggled with narrowing my focus, and truthfully, that is something I still struggle with today. I set upwards of 35 goals or 30 goals for myself at the start of the year, aiming my sights high as high as they will go, which is something I think a lot of athletes do. Goal setting is really incredible, and it's so necessary in life, and I really believe that setting those goals is key to being successful, just kind of guiding you into where it is that you want to go. But the issue for me was, when you lack that direction and want to achieve everything in sight simply for the sake of saying I did it, therein lies that problem. Just wanting to achieve things to say I did it and then move on to the next thing, kind of check it off your list. And of course, there's nothing wrong with achieving things and setting those goals, but I lacked a purpose behind them. And that was what I was struggling with. That was my biggest problem that I struggled with. So I pulled myself in so many different directions. And I intentionally decided to place myself in those directions because I wanted to achieve those goals. That was something that I wanted to do. But I would just find myself overwhelmed with the number of goals that I desired to achieve in that 12-month span. I would end up achieving a good number of them, sometimes even all of them. But then I found myself questioning, to what end? What purpose was I trying to achieve? What mission am I on? Why am I setting this goal in particular? So my direction and focus was lacking in my goal setting. So Val encouraged me to only set a goal if it aligned with my word for the year, the one that would guide me through 2019. So to come up with this word, she sent me a quick Bible study to do. I answered some study prompts, and I was well on my way to discovering what my word would be. I initially thought that my word was relentless because I love that word, and I think it really encompasses the entrepreneurial spirit, relentlessly pursuing your goals. It's something that I believe actually defines entrepreneurship, that relentless pursuit of those goals that you set for yourself, the ones that you want to achieve. But I realized I had pushed that word. I had come up with relentless before I even started the Bible study because I wanted that to be the word that guided my year. But oddly enough, another word kept popping into my head as I was going through the study and answering the questions. I really didn't like this word, and I really didn't fully understand it at the time, and I still don't fully understand it, but my trip really helped gain clarity in what my word might actually mean. I just honestly didn't want that word to be my word, and that's really how I knew that that was my word. When I didn't want it to be that, I was like, oh, okay, that's probably the word that's supposed to guide my year. And the word came up to be surrender. It kind of touched on, I have an inability to let go of control and go with the flow. And again, I think as athletes, that's something we struggle with as a whole. I mean, wanting to have that goal setting mentality and wanting things to work out exactly as you align them to. So you see an end goal, you see an end result, you see I want to jump 38 feet in the triple jump. I want to score this many goals by the end of my soccer season. I want to have this number of points in basketball. Whatever it is, you have those tangible, real goals that you're able to set for yourself as an athlete. And because of that, you set yourself on this rigid path. And it's not bad because it pushes you down that particular path, like the exact one that you want to go down to achieve those goals. But when you step out in real life and apply that athletic mindset, that goal setting mindset to what you're doing now, you can't be so rigid. And I struggled with that immensely. Something that is, just letting go and allowing kind of the process to unfold rather than being so honed in on, so focused on that one end result that I think is going to come of it. One thing with me, and I believe you guys, from past guests I've interviewed and just from me telling my story, I'm a Christian. And so I believe that, God has placed certain paths on your life. It's not something that you sit back on your haunches and wait to be revealed to you. It's something that you work towards. It's something that you try and discover on your own. And for me, I have this incredible podcast that I'm so thankful that you guys listen into. I've had this mission that I believe was placed on my heart, this Keep Moving Forward mission that I wanted to go after. But lately, it seemed like at the beginning of the year, I struggled with direction, kind of, okay, well, I love Keep Moving Forward. And you guys can see on my board back there, if you're watching this video, I asked myself, who or what am I aiming at? Where do I want Keep Moving Forward to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? I'm just trying to guide myself down this path and what I want Keep Moving Forward to be. And in that, I was trying to pursue just wanting to know what exactly God's plan was for me, what it is for me, what He is trying to place on my heart. And I thought that if I could just let go, if I could actually just let go, I would be able to hear Him. But that was a struggle. I was in a never-ending cycle of, okay, I set this goal for myself. I'm going to let go. I'm going to listen. I'm going to do this, this, and this. But that wasn't the point. Letting go isn't a goal to achieve. It's something that you have to allow happen to you. You have to be intentional about trying to do that. And again, that athlete mindset, it's really hard. It was really hard for me to let go. And it's still something I'm not pretending as if I've solved it or I've figured it out. It is something I daily struggle with in trying to pursue my goals and pursue this mission that I believe I'm on with Keep Moving Forward. And just kind of figuring out, not trying to pigeonhole it, but figure out the direction that it's supposed to go with this mission. So I thought that if I could just, again, if I could let go, if I would have that ability, I would be able to hear God's plan for me. And that's what I thought. That's truly what I believed was my purpose at the start of the year. One morning when I was studying, so I think you guys know too, we've talked about this before. Something I do is I get up early. And I read an article one time by Navy SEALs, and it was about how if you get up early, that time is your own. It doesn't belong to anybody else's. So you don't respond to emails. You don't give it to anybody else. It's your time to do with what you desire. And so for me, I typically read in the morning, or I try and just do something to get my head right for the day to come. And while I do that, sometimes I listen to music, particularly worship music, if it helps me. So one morning I was listening to a song, and there was a lyric that came out, and it said, "Lead me where my trust is without borders." And I thought that was really interesting, but then I knew at that moment too, wow, surrender really is my word. That word came to my mind. The idea of being led somewhere so that it's really hard to let go and trust something completely and just go for it, go all in. And the idea that it's without borders. So you set up these artificial borders for yourself, and it's naturally something that we do. Again, being a goal-setting person, seeing the end result, the exact one that you want, knowing that to be your end goal. But what if there is another goal, something else entirely that you never even thought of, never even saw possible because you were so pigeonhole focused on that one goal? And so I liked the thought of without borders, is trying to, rather than constructing this box I had built for Keep Moving Forward, to tear down those walls and actually allow myself to be led to unknown terrain, something that is really difficult for me to actually do, just allow to happen. So January, I had my word. I had this determination to only set goals if they aligned with my word. That was my intention behind discovering this word and determining what it was. And then I have the whole year ahead of me. So it's January, I'm ready to seize my year. But I never in a million years thought that this word would actually lead me to go out of the country. That is not something that I believe the word surrender would lead me to. I imagined it was specifically to keep moving forward. It was specifically to the goals that I wanted to achieve, my business, being an entrepreneur, as an athlete, as a coach. It was something very specific to that. But as is kind of reflective of just life and letting go and being that entrepreneur, being a person, being a former athlete, being a current athlete, whatever it is, You have to kind of allow, just roll with the punches. You have to be willing to understand that the envisioned goal that you saw for yourself, that end result, that might not be it. And you are being led to something that is far greater than anything you could have ever imagined. And that's the cool part. But it's also very easy to forget time and time again, though that continues to happen when I do step out, when I'm able to let go. It's almost as if I have short-term memory. It's like I forget the past time when I was able to step out and just actually envision a new goal, or just see a different path for myself, or a path for wherever I was going, in whatever stage of life I was in. Just the time and time again of how much better it was than what I currently envisioned. But and that happened again at the beginning of this year. So this trip to Turkey it came up when I have a best friend from college. Her name is Tirza, and she's traveled internationally pretty much throughout her whole life, taking different trips. And she had decided that this year, from last year we were talking about it, and she's like, yeah, this year I decided I'm going to go to Israel. And she asked if I had wanted to go with her. And I thought that would be really cool. I mean, so I said yes, and thinking again, okay, surrendering. I'll say yes. Why not? Let's try and see. This is a random thing, seemingly random, something I never in a million years thought I would do. So sure, let's say yes to going on a trip to Israel. So we both started researching Israel. And she presented to me, because we wanted to go see a bunch of sites and historical places, and specifically biblical places, places that come up in the Bible. And so she said, as we were going through this, just researching, Israel has so many different biblical places, but another place that has a lot is Turkey. And that kind of struck me. I mean, I honestly had never thought about going to the country Turkey. But I said, okay, so we both decided we were going to independently research Turkey and Israel. And 1 week from that day, I think it was a Monday, we would decide where we're going to go. So we met for dinner that following week, and we both unanimously decided on Turkey, which was crazy because we thought we would have to argue and come back and forth with where we were going to go. But it was crazy that we just both decided we were going to go to Turkey. And that was that. So we started to meet once a week to plan out our trip. The places that we want to go. We would each plan different parts of it, different locations, different cities that we wanted to see. Throughout the process, sometimes I would get anxiety about the trip, but overall, because we were in the planning stage, it's almost as if I didn't realize we were planning to actually leave, to actually go somewhere. And that didn't hit me truly until we were on the plane to Turkey. That's crazy, but it's true. I mean, I thought, okay, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to make all the plans and processes in place to make this a successful trip. We had a spreadsheet. We had a Google Doc that we shared with one another. Every detail of the trip was planned out. All that was left to do was go on the trip. And it wasn't until going there that I realized, oh my gosh, we are going to Turkey. I'm going to be somewhere for 10 days, which is the longest amount of time I've ever gone without seeing my family. I know that's crazy because going to college, but my family's always been close by. We've always been very relationally close. And so it would be weird to go such a long amount of time without seeing them. So 10 days truly was the longest amount of time I'd gone without seeing them. And it was really my first time going out of the country at all. I'd taken a trip, I think, when I was younger, to the Bahamas with my family, Canada one time, but really going out of the country and immersing myself in a different culture with a different kind of people, that was what this trip was. And that was my first time ever going out and experiencing this. But, even coming up on the trip, all the anxiety and stress that I felt, I was committed to going on it. I wasn't going to leave tears. I truly did have periods of time where I thought, I'm not going to do this. I was thinking something's going to come up. There's no way I'm going on this trip. But even with that, what felt like paralyzing fear at times, thanks to Tirza and her encouragement and just her friendship through it all, and just her reliance and her ability to push me, and knowing that she had traveled so much in her life, I knew this trip truly would be worth it in the end. But I didn't fully realize that until we actually came back, and I was prepping for this episode, outlining, going through my day to day. I didn't realize how worth it was going to be until I was writing this for you guys and preparing to tell you what had happened. So I just kind of go day by day what we did. So the flight there, I had a really bad anxiety attack. it was 11 and a half hours. And so that's, again, another first. That was the longest time I'd ever been on a plane. And it was pretty much nighttime the entire time we flew, because we took off at 7:40 p.m. in Georgia, and we landed at night in Turkey because of the time difference, a 7-hour time difference. We were 7 hours ahead in Turkey. And I fell asleep on the plane, but I woke up maybe about 3 or 4 hours into the flight, and my heart was beating so fast. I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And I thought, okay, if I look outside and I see the light, if I see the clouds, I'll feel better because I'll see the outside. But I opened the window and it was dark because it was nighttime. And I honestly didn't know what to do. So I got up and I just started walking the aisles of the plane, trying to calm myself down, trying to breathe. I went up to a flight attendant and I asked her, do you have any Advil or do you have something that will calm me down? Because I had a headache too. I said, is there anything that you would suggest I do to help calm me down? And she just looked at me and she said, no. And it was funny. I mean, looking back, it's funny. At the time, I was like, well, that wasn't really helpful. I was kind of thinking maybe someone would help me, someone who had experienced anxiety as a flight attendant, but nah. And so I was actually... Before we left, I had just finished a book by an author. Her name's Rachel Hollis, and it was called Girl, Wash Your Face. And it's kind of a self-help, kick you in the butt book where it's, stop complaining, stop apologizing so much. You're going to do something. You're an entrepreneur. Just go out and do it. And the last words of the book are girl, wash your face. So it's get up, pick yourself up, figure out how you're going to move past this. I was thinking through her book, just again, trying to calm down. It was the last thing I had done before falling asleep was reading. And I literally told myself to grow a pair. I was like, okay, you're alone right now. Tears is sleeping. You can't call anybody to calm you down. You have to figure out how to calm down yourself. And I was like, you're fine. You're 26. You're just flying to a new country. That's okay. Nothing bad is going to happen. You're going to be fine. And that actually did help. I was able to talk myself off the ledge, and calm myself down, and I was able to fall back asleep. Next thing, I woke up and they served us breakfast, and we had landed in Istanbul. We went through passport check, and so that we had our Turkish visas. We were ready to go, made it through there. It took us about an hour to find the domestic terminal, so we had flown international because coming from Atlanta, flew into the international terminal at Istanbul. But then we were going to take an immediate flight to a town called Kusadasi, which is where Ephesus was, which was going to be our first stop on the trip. So we struggled to find the domestic terminal because we couldn't find anybody that spoke English, and we don't speak Turkish. And for some reason, our phones wouldn't connect to Wi-Fi, so I couldn't even use my translation app to try and help us out. But obviously, luckily we found the domestic terminal and we flew to Kusadasi, and we landed that night around 11 o'clock. And then we had the weirdest taxi ride ever. It was this man who had taken us. We were about an hour from where we were staying at a place called the Gultepe Apartments, which was close to where we were going to see Ephesus, the different sites we were going to see in Kusadasi. And so this man started driving us, and then all of a sudden, about 10 minutes into the ride, he said, okay, in about 10 minutes, I'm going to drop you off with my son, and he's going to take you the rest of the way. And we're like, no, why would you drop us off? And there was a language barrier. He was talking to us through Google Translate, and it was very confusing. We're like, why would you do this? Why would you drop us off? And he was showing us pictures of him. And Tirza had realized, she told me that he was most likely trying to set us up with his son. And so he wanted us to meet him. And I mean, we had no idea what was going to happen, why he wanted us at that time of night to meet his son, where his son would have taken us. It was pretty stressful and anxiety-ridden taxi ride. And I actually carried that anxiety over into other taxi rides we took the rest of the trip, even though everything was fine. And the man ended up taking us all the way to Kusadasi, where we were staying in the apartments. It was just a very weird first interaction the first night we were there. But we ended up making it to the Gultepe Apartments, fell asleep, woke up early the next day, went on a quick run, and then we were off to Ephesus. And seeing there, I mean, Ephesus is a place in the Bible. It's a city in the Bible. And the idea that leading up to the trip, Tirza and I actually did a study through Ephesians. And so we had read all about it and learned all about it before going to Ephesus. So we were able to just pinpoint different things and recall different things that had happened in the book of Ephesians throughout our trip, throughout our walking tour. And that was really, really cool. Just to be able to have that experience, to have read it, in the Bible and then go experience it firsthand. We got back that night. We had dinner together, and we found out that our apartment was really right next to the seas, the Aegean Sea, and we walked out of the place, and we literally walked out of the apartment, turned left, and right there we immediately hit the beach, and it was the most beautiful water I've ever seen in my life. It was this bright green and blue. It was so crystal clear. We spent a lot of time at the beach, actually walking around, running, sitting and reading. And it was just, it was amazing to have that opportunity and really not realize where we were staying before we went there. So the next day, same thing. We got up early. We went on a run. I struggled with both the first 2 nights. I struggled a great deal with sleeping. And I guess, because of jet lag, the time difference, my body wasn't used to it. And again, I struggled some with anxiety. And I think a big part of that once we landed was the fact that I was in a new place. I really... I don't know. I didn't know what to expect. And so I struggled with that, but I was able to work through it. A big thing that helped was I carried a journal with me, and I was able to journal out, and I wrote everything out that we did. 1, so I wouldn't forget it, but 2, it helped calm me down. In the middle of the night, if I struggled with sleeping, or the following day, it helped me kind of just recenter myself, and prepare for whatever was going to come next. So next morning, got up, ran, and on our Ephesus tour, we had passed in the bus that we were on this really cool looking pirate castle. And the guy said, yeah, who was leading us, it's a Kusadasi pirate castle. And it was not far from our apartment where we were staying. So we decided, okay, we're going to walk there today and see what it was like. And that was honestly the coolest thing ever. That was I loved Ephesus, but staying in Kusadasi, walking to the pirate castle, walking around in it, we sat and we read there for a couple of hours. Being in that castle was just really, really cool. And it was an experience that we didn't even think we were going to have. We had no idea that pirate castle was there. But we got to see it. We got to experience it, which was amazing. So after spending the day in the Kusadasi pirate castle, reading and just chilling, we flew out again back to Istanbul that night. So the second part of our trip was going to be spending a couple days in Istanbul and seeing the sights there, which there were a lot. The majority of our trip was going to be spent there. So initially, we got to the airport and our flight to Istanbul was delayed. Every flight that we took, we flew Turkish Airlines. It was a great airline. Every time you were on the plane, they served you a cheese sandwich. No matter the duration of the flight, whether it was an hour long, which most of our flights were, the domestic ones, or 11 and a half hours long, at any time, you could ask for a cheese sandwich and they would give it to you, which is pretty sweet because Tears and I eat a lot. And so it was a good, kind of a cool way. Oh, we're flying today. We're going to get a cheese sandwich. And they weren't bad. They were pretty good, actually. And so when our flight was delayed, though, the Turkish Airlines flight attendants came out in front of the gate. And there was a cart of sandwiches and a cart of drinks. And so we went up and they said, okay, you can come. If you show your boarding pass, you can get one. It was mayhem. It was a million people. Everybody on the flight ran up. It was as if there was going to be a shortage of sandwiches. It was so stressful. Everybody was pushing you and shoving you just to get a sandwich. And that was another kind of just stressful experience. And me and Tirza were walking away from it. And she was like, that was crazy. And I said, yeah, that was incredibly stressful. I hate being in small spaces. I'm pretty claustrophobic. And so that was just a weird situation to be in. And she laughed and she said, that moment right there was designed for you. You have to have weird travel experiences and things that you're going to remember. And that's a random weird thing, but I'm definitely going to remember that because it was just crazy. The mad rush for a cheese sandwich before we boarded our flight back to Istanbul. So we were delayed for about 2 hours, but then we finally got on our plane and we were off back to Istanbul. So we arrived there, got our bags, and then we stayed in an Airbnb right in the center of Istanbul. We were only a mile from the different sites that we wanted to see. So because we were delayed, we got there pretty late that night, and so we ended up sleeping in some and we had flipped our days. So the first day we had planned to kind of knock out a lot and go see the bigger sites. But instead we decided, okay, we're going to sleep in some and flip our days, go to the smaller sites, the ones that would take up less time. So we initially we got breakfast and we went to the Basilica Cistern. So that was an underground cistern. It was really cool. You walked underground And the degree, it changed like maybe 20 degrees. It might have not been that drastic, but it felt so cold underground. And there was, it was damp everywhere because it used to hold a lot of water. And there were just really interesting things there. It was built by slaves, I mean, a long time ago, and they had some of the pillars that were holding up the cistern had the head of Medusa on them, and that was really interesting to see. It was just a beautiful place, and having that chance again, not really knowing what to expect, walking through there, it was just a good way to start the day. Next, we went to have lunch. And then across from where we had lunch was a place called the Topkapi Palace. And so that was an old palace built at that time, built a long time ago. And it was crazy to think we walked in there and that somebody or people had lived there. It was this huge courtyard. And then you walked into the palace itself and there were these massive beds and very elaborate rooms and ornate, silverware and plates and everything that they had. It was just awesome to see. It was really, really pretty. And actually, after seeing the Kusadasi Pirate Castle and then the Topkapi Palace, I thought that it would be really cool to go on a trip one time just throughout the world, or maybe, wherever they're just a castle tour. I thought a castle tour of the world would be really cool. And of course, I'm sure that's been thought of. But just the idea that people lived in castles, that's just, it kind of blows my mind, especially seeing some on this trip. So after going to the Topkapi Palace, we came back, called it a pretty early night because we decided we want to get up really early the next day and make sure we knocked out all of the other sites that we wanted to see, the bigger sites. So the next morning we woke up and the first thing we did was we went to the Hagia Sophia. So the Hagia Sophia I had actually talked to about it with my dad. He was really excited that we were going there. That was a place that he'd love to go. It was this huge cathedral, and the paintings on the wall, the structure of everything was so ornate. And Tirza had said she had a coworker who told her it was something that he would never forget when he visited there. And I felt that when you walked in, it's truly something that you're never gonna forget. I feel it's ingrained in my brain, what I saw and what I felt when I walked in. And I took a million pictures, but I feel as if those pictures don't do it justice. But I'm very happy that it elicits that memory of what I felt when I walked in there. We spent a good amount of time there. We walked all around, just taking it all in. And it was a breathtaking place to be. So after we went to the Hagia Sophia, right across, there was this courtyard. Right across the courtyard was the Blue Mosque. And the Blue Mosque is actually still in use today, but you're able to go inside of it. And that's what's unique about it as a mosque. You're able to go inside. And so before going inside, we had to take off our shoes and we had to cover our heads with a scarf. So we had each brought a scarf. You had to take off your shoes and put them in a plastic bag so as you don't touch the ground or bring any kind of dirt into the mosque. And it was really beautiful in there too. That you couldn't go to all the places in it because again, it's still in use and people were worshiping in there. But we could walk around a good part of it, good majority of it, and see again the different paintings that were in there. The ornate detail that went into the construction of this mosque. So once we left the mosque, next door, there looked like there was another mosque. And so we thought, okay, well, we're here. Let's try and just hit as many sites as we can. And it was this mausoleum. And it was very strange because I guess it occurred to me that people had passed away and were in that mausoleum, but you could actually walk through it. And it looked like a mosque on the outside, but all the people who had been buried in the mausoleum were in the center of it, and you could walk around the outskirts of it. That was really interesting. It was something I had never experienced before. And again, it was the same thing. Took off your shoes, had to cover your head to go in, and walk around. After we had done the mausoleum, we headed back towards our Airbnb. And we were just going to hang out. We were hungry, so we were looking for a place to eat. And this was Sunday. And we walked past this place called Cafe Arata. And we saw a bunch of people eating like a lot of food. But everybody had the same dish that they were eating. And we were interested to see what it was. So we went in to have lunch there. And once we sat down, you were immediately served. You were given food. You didn't even read the menu. You were just given this whole plethora of hummus and tzatziki sauce and breads and vegetables and fruits and different jams. and you were just that everybody ate the same thing. And we realized we sat down at a place that was serving a traditional Turkish brunch. And so I guess every Sunday that's something restaurants do. And I guess the people there experience. You can have every meal that you have, they offer you tea and coffee after the meal, no matter what. And it was just really cool to have. We had tea and coffee, and we had this whole Turkish brunch laid out for us. And I think for myself, that was my absolute favorite meal that we had. The food there was delicious. The fruits and vegetables were so fresh, but that Turkish brunch, to just sit down and be served immediately and not speaking the language. None of the waiters spoke English, but we just sat down and ate food. It's kind of cool how food seems to be a universal language. And it was one of the coolest experiences that we had outside of seeing the incredible sights that we saw. So we ended up sitting at Cafe Arata for a long time. We read and just kind of unwound from the rest of the day. We ended up going back to our Airbnb, kind of freshening up. And then that night we went to something called the Galata Tower. So it was right down the street from where we were staying. And it was said to have the best view in all of Istanbul, of the whole city. And it was really cool. You'd go up, you wait in the line for maybe 45 minutes, take an elevator all the way up to the top, and then you go outside and you can walk around this whole tower and see the entire city. And it was really beautiful and very picturesque. We got some cool pictures up there. And there's also a restaurant up there. And so we intended to have dinner there. So we sat down, and I'm not sure if it was, an off day for the waiting staff, or if they just assumed we were tourists, we weren't going to eat food. But they were very rude when we went up to the Galata Tower, and it was the service was very underwhelming. It was just mean. And so we were going to eat there, but we ended up just leaving after having a hot tea, and going to eat somewhere else. Because it was kind of frustrating, and we're like, no, we're not gonna stay here longer than we want to. But again, the view from there was really beautiful, and that was something that we took away from that whole experience. The next day was our last day in Istanbul, and we ended up going to the Grand Bazaar. So the best way I can describe it is it's kind of this inside-outside, really intense mall. So there's people who have their own stores lining the whole, all these different kind of labyrinths that you walk through. Everybody sells something different, and the whole point is that you're supposed to negotiate the price of things, and you haggle, and that's what you do in the Grand Bazaar. And to me, that was kind of a stressful experience, but Tirza was really good at it. She was very good at haggling and getting a lower price. Because it's funny, there was one store right across from another. They would sell the same thing, but they would offer you different prices, and so you just haggle and go to the one that sold you the one with the best price. So it was just a really fun experience, and was cool. When you go there, though, we read, and Tirza had already knew this. Someplace like the Grand Bazaar, if you carry a bag, you're supposed to wear it on your front, or just be very careful because people can take your stuff. And so we went there only carrying our wallets. Everything we had was in our hands, so we didn't carry our backpacks or anything, to make sure that we didn't run into any issues. And we didn't. It was pretty easy, and it was a lot of fun to walk around there. After we went to the Grand Bazaar, it was pretty early. We ended up walking back, again, close to where our Airbnb was. It's only a mile from the major sites. And we just kind of cafe hopped for the rest of the day. We had both of us brought books, and we just sat in different cafes, drinking coffee, drinking tea, just to experience the city, just reading our way through cafes, essentially. And by the end of the day, we were really ready to be on the next leg of our trip, which was to Cappadocia. That was the most exciting. That was the place I was most excited to go. We were looking forward to hiking and hot air balloon rides. A hot air balloon ride was something I was adamant about wanting to do before we set the trip. I had actually planned the Cappadocia portion to that end. I wanted to be sure that we did these hot air balloons. So the next morning, we got up really early, around 3 o'clock, because we had a 5 o'clock flight to Nevşehir, which is the airport you land in to get to Cappadocia. We landed in, it was probably the smallest airport I've ever seen in my life. Not probably, it was the smallest airport. It only had 2 gates. You landed outside and you walked off the plane onto the tarmac and then walked into the airport. But luckily, it was really easy to find the van driver who was going to take us to our hotel that we were staying in Cappadocia. So we got on the van, went to Cappadocia, and immediately put our stuff down and went on a hike. We went walking. It was gorgeous. To say that Cappadocia is burned in my head forever, that's absolutely true, because the cave structures and the things that you see when you walk there, there's nothing like it that I've ever seen in my life. And I'm not sure there is ever anything like that. Tirza actually made the comment. She had a friend who, I guess it was someone that she knew that was on their deathbed. And one thing that this person said was, like of all the things that he or she did in his or her life, was that Cappadocia was something that they would never forget. And that's the place they encourage people to go. And that's pretty striking, to have someone be on their deathbed and say to go someplace like this, go to Cappadocia. It was truly, it was kind of the gravity of that really stuck to me. And I agree. I mean, I'm so happy that we had the opportunity to go walk through these caves and have this experience. And so when we first got there, we hiked for about 2 hours walking around. We got a little bit lost, but then it worked out because we ended up finding our way back and heading back towards our hotel. It's called the Blue Moon Cave Hotel, which there are a lot of cave hotels because they're cave rooms, and the different rooms are actually in caves, which is really cool. We didn't end up staying in a cave room, but we did stay in the Blue Moon Cave Hotel, which we loved. We loved staying there. It was, again, very accessible, really close to the things that we wanted to do. So we came back to the hotel, took a shower, and then we went out again on a walk to find, it was called an open air museum. And so the open air museum, again, was in all of these different caves, and you could walk through them. And inside there were these ornate paintings on the top. And a lot of, actually, there were remnants of human skeletons found there too. And we learned that at the time that it was built, it was a kind of a refuge, a monastery, a place for Christians to escape to when they were being persecuted. And they were held up there. They were put there by different people. And it was just a really, really amazing place to be. And again, the views that we saw, the caves that we saw, just the skyline, everything was, it's just something that I'm never going to forget. I know that. That day, so the next morning, it was going to be our last day in Nevşehir, and again, or Cappadocia. And again, hot air balloons. That was what I wanted to do. That was on my goals list. That's what I wanted to see when we were there. But unfortunately, if there's any whiff of bad weather, they won't allow you to go up in the hot air balloons. And the next day, and even the first day we were there, the wind was really bad. And so because of that, they canceled all hot air balloon rides. And we were leaving that night. We weren't going to be able to come back and do them at any time. And at first, I guess I thought I would be really, really devastated because that was something I was so set on doing. It was funny. It was really hard for me to be disappointed because of everything that we did do, everything that we had experienced, everything I was able to witness. It was honestly impossible for me to be disappointed that we didn't get to do the hot air balloons because everything else was already worth it. So our last day in Cappadocia, because the hot air balloons weren't going to happen, we again read our way through cafes throughout the town. It was pretty cold last day. We stayed in a couple cafes that had a fireplace. That was really nice. And we read the whole day. And that night we took a shuttle back to the Nevşehir airport to fly back to Istanbul for our last day of the trip. And it's cool, on that flight, it was a night flight, a domestic flight. And to break the fast of Ramadan, which was going on at the time, they served us a whole meal on the plane, even though it was an hour flight. It was tomato soup and a sandwich and drinks. It was very cool to have that. So we flew back to Istanbul to spend our last day in Turkey. So that day, I actually ended up getting pretty sick towards the end of the trip. I didn't feel super great. So we were staying at the hotel we were at. We, again, stayed near a beach unknowingly. And so we walked around that beach a lot, up and down. We read a lot that day. And we ended up just hanging out, just kind of having a really relaxed last day. And the next morning we got up and took took a taxi back to the flight home, to take our flight home from Istanbul back to Atlanta. So again, it was 11 hours. But this time I didn't get anxiety, which was really good. I was able to stay calm the whole time. And actually, I was able to stay up the entire 11 hours. I didn't do it on purpose. It just kind of happened. I guess I just wasn't able to sleep, maybe because I was feeling sick or whatever. But I watched so many movies, including kind of randomly Gone with the Wind, which was, I remember watching parts of it when I was younger, but that was my first time watching it all the way through. So it was interesting, and it was a fun flight back. So when I got home, I was able to just sleep through the night. I just, reflecting back, I mean, I'm so happy to be home now, but that trip was incredible. I mean, it just was. It was an incredible trip. And I'm not pretending as if I somehow exponentially matured over the course of 10 days or as if I'm now this experienced world traveler. I'm still Katie Galley, a Jersey transplant living her best life in Atlanta, Georgia. But I did gain greater clarity on this trip to what my word for the year, surrender, really means. I came to realize surrendering doesn't mean letting go and being led down one particular path. It means stepping out and continuously pushing yourself beyond your limits to see how far you can actually go. As most of you know at this point, I am a huge Disney fan. I used to have a blog about it called This Week at Disney, which actually morphed eventually into what Keep Moving Forward is today. But when I got back home a couple weekends ago, I watched Moana. It's, for some reason, seems to be on TV a lot lately. And just before the end of the movie, when Moana is to face Te Kā, she sings a reprise to the song How Far I'll Go, which is the one she sings at the beginning. And in it, she says, "The call isn't out there at all, it's inside me." Yes, at 26 years old, I still get life lessons from Disney movies, and I'm really not even slightly ashamed of that. Disney's amazing, and I love their company, and I love going to Disney with my family. But Moana says it right there. The call that I was searching for, the one that I thought going on this trip would reveal to me, the one that I thought would be revealed to me over time as I was led by this word surrender, if I could just let go. That call I was searching for, the call I believe that God actually did place on my life, I've always had access to it. I just needed to simply let go, step out in the radical faith that you're called to, and do something I never dreamed I could do. Oddly enough, it didn't even take the form of starting a new vertical of Keep Moving Forward. It really didn't take any form of a career path at all. It was stepping out into the world in a way I never thought I could do. It was doing something that I truly never believed I could do in a million years. When I tell you that I would have been content having never traveled in my whole life, I am telling you the truth. I'm a homebody. I love being at home. I love my schedule. I love the structure I have to my days. I love being in my house. I just love following my calendar and having the calmness of that semblance of structure that I have. And it really caused me true stress and anxiety to even say yes to a trip like the one I just took. But looking back on those 10 days, all that anxiety really was worth it. And that's crazy to say because I just had a lot of anxiety, but really it was so worth it. The big thing is I really cannot believe that I was willing to go my entire life having never seen with my own eyes the Hagia Sophia or the caves of Cappadocia. I see now that it's not being called down one particular path. It's opening yourself up to say yes to the thing you never thought that you would have the courage to do. So, obviously, now traveling is a part of my journey. Some of you might think that it is silly as you love traveling, but for me, that is a form for me of truly stepping out, a form of radical faith, and a form of ultimate surrendering. Whatever your act of letting go of the control in your life looks for you, I encourage you to take it. You might be wondering how you know what it is you are supposed to do, what it is you are supposed to let go of. And to that, I'll tell you that for me, I always know it's what I'm supposed to do because I really never want to do it. But to give you an idea of where letting go can lead you, 3 years ago, I felt a call to start this podcast. For months, I fought it, being terrified to record my own voice and even talk to people over the phone so that I might help share their stories. Who was I to do any of that? Yet, here we are today. So I want to encourage you to say yes, but not say yes to just anything. Say yes to something that you never thought you'd be capable of doing. Say yes to the thing that scares you most. Find your limit and sprint past it. You'll surprise yourself with the places you'll go when you simply refuse to cease moving forward. The call isn't out there at all. It's inside of you. Listen for it and say yes to it. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. To learn more about our guest, Check out the show notes at keepmovingforward.us. While you're there, go ahead and subscribe to our newsletter to stay up to date on all things coming out of the Keep Moving Forward Creators Studio. Always remember, you can beat the odds and go the distance if only you keep moving forward.